Trump's become absolutely exasperated with Putin. It's quite clear. Putin's overplayed his hand. He's carried on bombing these cities, killing civilians, and Americans have shifted position. So I think it's extremely welcome, not just on the arms, as you say, selling American kit to Europe to pass on to Ukrainians and then getting stuff to Ukraine quickly, but also on the tariffs. And I think what was interesting to me is 100% is a pretty significant secondary tariff to be whacked on something like India or Malaysia or Indonesia. People have been trading with Russia through oil products or whatever. But also, it's a step back from the 500, which Lindsey Graham's been speaking about. Yeah. So I understand, as far as I understand, is the Congress will give a range of authorization as a president up to 500%, and he can then use and ratchet up and down. So we'll have to see how the Kremlin take it.
But just to take stock of what we've heard so far, joined by John Foreman, who's a former British defence attaché to Moscow and in Kyiv. Welcome to you.
Hello, John.
Hi, it's good to have you here. Just on what we've heard so far. So we had the announcement then. The president is telling us there will be weapons sent to NATO countries. These will include clearly the Patriot missiles, advanced weaponry. Patriot's the most valuable and an effective weapon in air defence. They can take down incoming ballistic missiles. He's giving Putin 50 days, he told us just a moment ago, to say the necessary, to come to the table. Say he's coming to the table to change the way things are going to pan out. The way things are going to pan out is this weaponry is going to be sold, not given, but sold to NATO countries, including France, Germany, the United Kingdom, quite a list, other countries, a long list. They're going to be taking receipt of these weapons and passing them on to Ukraine by way of a quick, rapid deployment of this equipment. Now, what do you think about all this? I mean, he said it also sounded like a very significant announcement, John, that there will be in hand, ready, in reserve, sanctions, secondary sanctions to be deployed against Russia. Now, and that 100% tariffs if Russia did not comply with the ultimatum as it now is to come to the table. On that, do you take that to mean the kind of sanctions we've been hearing from people like Senator Lindsey Graham, so hitting countries that buy Russian oil with tariffs, and we now hear 100%. That would be, I suppose, our assumption.
Well, my first reaction is finally, at last, we've had 6 months of approach where the Americans have tried a softly win-win approach to the Russians, and finally Trump's become absolutely exasperated with Putin. It's quite clear. Putin's overplayed his hand. He's carried on bombing these cities, killing civilians, and Americans have shifted position. So I think it's extremely welcome, not just on the arms, as you say, selling American kit to Europe to pass on to Ukrainians and then getting stuff to Ukraine quickly, but also on the tariffs. And I think what was interesting to me is 100% is a pretty significant secondary tariff to be whacked on something like India or Malaysia or Indonesia. People have been trading with Russia through oil products or whatever. But also, it's a step back from the 500, which Lindsey Graham's been speaking about. Yeah. So I understand, as far as I understand, is the Congress will give a range of authorization as a president up to 500%, and he can then use and ratchet up and down. So we'll have to see how the Kremlin take it. I mean, I think they probably baked in some response from Trump, but if he's talking about 100% within 50 days, will it change Putin's position? So far since January, Putin wants to stick it out. Actually, sort of basically ignored what Americans have been proposing for a ceasefire and then talks.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to go back to the White House, but I think we'll get some more clarity on the sanctions that were announced, or the plan for sanctions that was announced by President Trump. He was talking about 100% secondary sanctions. Clearly, by definition, secondary sanctions to be imposed on countries dealing with Russia. So in that sense, squeezing Russian trade. The Senate, they are possibly acting in parallel to that. You've got some of those senators talking about a 500% tariff. Yeah. We'll try and get some clarity on whether the two things are operating side by side, or whether this is to replace that, or however the president sees it. And we'll get hopefully some more on that in just a moment. But on the weapons being sent out there, this is, as you say, this is a very useful addition to the Ukrainian arsenal being sold to NATO, not given to Ukraine, which is a step back, further back from the way that some of the NATO friends of Ukraine are operating, John.
Yeah, I think the drift has been away from donations to Ukraine for the last 3 years. And what's happened is the Congress previously gave money to the American industry to provide weapons to Ukraine. And what we've seen now is European money will buy those weapons and provide them to Ukraine.
Yeah.
And Ukraine's now producing 40% of its own weaponry, which is up from 10% or 5% at the beginning of the war. So they're trying to move away from this sort of donation, which empties your own arsenals, which obviously the Americans are worried about vis-a-vis Iran or China or other threats, North Korea around the world, and want to put it more on a, should we say, a more business-like basis, which is very much in Trump's sort of mindset and also quite transactional.
Yeah.
But I think also it's interesting the wording and the way he's been talking about, I'm very unhappy, I'm disappointed. He's speaking positively about NATO. He's been obviously hoisted in these pictures and scenes, terrifying scenes from Kiev, where men, women, and children are being murdered on a daily basis in maternity hospitals. He's mentioned, we've had the largest raids, numbers are going up and up. And of course, the trajectory is, if we're at 700 drones now, it will be 1,000 drones a night by September. So I think it's extremely welcome.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more from Trump. I'd like to see more on the oil cap by the G7. I'd like to see more on seizing of Russian assets. I'd like to see more on support to Ukraine, its hour of needs. And I'd like to see more on sanctions on Russia itself, not just on secondary sanctions. But
Yes.
beggars can't be choosers. If Trump's been spent the last 6 months sort of being extremely reluctant to bring the hammer down on Russia, now he actually is. We can't cart from the sidelines when he's actually shifted the whole US approach.
Yeah, I mean, Ukraine will clearly be happy to get this measure of support from, the most powerful member of NATO. These weapons are badly needed. The airstrikes on Ukraine have been escalating pretty much night by night. It is a curious feature of all of this that the president now telling us he's lost patience with Putin. It's taken him time, hasn't it? I mean, pretty much everyone else will be more than aware, that Vladimir Putin has been playing for time, has been stringing President Trump and everyone else along.
Yeah, I mean, I think Trump's approach wasn't secret. We knew his approach was going to be his second term during the election campaign last year. And he's always been reluctant to be on the side of Ukraine, should we say, his bag of support, who wants to actually throw the blame at Ukraine for starting the war. And he's been sort of slightly bemused bystander on the side, so we say, working between the two sides rather than actually having Ukraine's back. So I'm not surprised ultimately that he's lost his patience. But you have to remember, in the first term, Trump met Putin, and then Trump then provided defensive weapons to Ukraine. It wasn't Obama, it was Trump.
Yeah.
So he has been shown to be capable of changing position. I wish he'd done it earlier. I wish we hadn't had to go through the 6 months of fake peace negotiations that Russia's stringing him along and not change the position. We'll have to see whether these sticks are now going to work to show focused minds in the Kremlin.
All right, John, thank you for your take on this developing story. John Foreman, former UK defence attaché in Moscow and in Kyiv.